I was supposed to feel joy. Instead, I felt watched. Eleni and I had just come home from our 12-week ultrasound appointment. The little flutter on the screen had a heartbeat. Our baby was real. But instead of celebrating with bagels and orange juice like we planned, we locked every window in the apartment. We moved the crib box into the coat closet, and I taped a folded towel across the peephole. It wasn't paranoia, it was protocol. When I kissed Eleni's temple that night and whispered, "I'll protect you both," I wasn't being romantic. I was issuing a vow, a preemptive strike. Because my family, my legacy-bound, image-obsessed, order-worshipping family, would never allow this child to be born if they could help it. Let me back up. My name is Nora Whitaker. I'm 29. I was raised in a 4-story Georgian home outside Boston with antique mirrors and no locked doors. My mother, Reverend Agnes Whitaker, ran our household the way she ran her church rules: first love if you earn it. My father, Thomas, is an estate manager who speaks mostly through wire transfers and ultimatums. My brother Luke is the heir apparent, Harvard Law slick hair, knows Latin. I was the accident that survived. The Whitakers believe in redemption through obedience. I believed in art therapy and getting the hell out at 18 bet. I hadn't spoken to my family in almost 5 years, not until the pregnancy test turned pink. It started small, Eleni's name appearing on "Who's Been Searching You" alerts. Then a subtle reshuffle in my trust account records. And the real kicker, a thin ivory envelope at our door with the Whitaker crest embossed in red. I opened it on the toilet seat, shaking. Inside, the child standing in covenant. That's what they called it. Not baby, not grandchild, just the child. The letter outlined what Eleni and I must do: attend a family tribunal, sign the covenant of purity, and agree to its clauses, including baptismal location, legal name, approval mandatory boarding school by age 9, and revocation of inheritance if the child is raised outside Whitaker's spiritual tradition. It read like a cultish prenup for unborn humans. Eleni laughed at first. "Is this even enforceable?" she asked. She's an architect born to Cuban immigrants, built like a storm, the kind of woman who runs headfirst into hurricanes. But I saw the tremor in her hand when she read Clause 14, the family reserves the right to challenge custody if said child is raised in contradiction to founding values. That night we changed our OB clinic. Then the phone calls began. Blocked numbers, dead air. Once a whisper, "Your bloodline does not belong to you." Eleni told me to report it. I didn't. Deep down I knew the voice. My brother Luke had said those exact words when I came out at 17. A week later, the windows on Eleni's car were smashed. Nothing stolen. Just a pamphlet left on the driver's seat, "Reclaiming Wayward Women," a restoration conference by Reverend Agnes Whitaker. I had to fight Eleni to not call the cops. She didn't want a paper trail leading back to the baby. We told no one. Not her family in Florida, not my patients at the trauma center where I worked. The only person I contacted was Dr. Ann Koenig, my former therapist, now friend, now emergency consultant. She called what was happening symbolic stalking, a psychological war meant to exhaust your sense of safety. "They won't attack," she said. "They'll erode." At week 15, I got a restricted calendar invite from my father's legal assistant. Subject: pre-hearing mediation, family compliance. Location: a private floor of a law firm downtown. When I declined, Luke emailed me personally, "You are not above the covenant, Nora. Bring the child or we'll bring the motion." Eleni didn't speak for an hour after that. I wish I could say I stormed into court with fury and courage, but I didn't. I froze, and Eleni, God bless her, packed us into a rental, drove 3 hours north, and booked a last-minute cabin on a foggy island off the Maine coast. A place with no Wi-Fi and a wood-burning stove. The kind of place people in witness protection might retreat to. I remember the first night. Eleni couldn't sleep. She was pacing barefoot on cold wood, whispering numbers in Spanish to calm herself. I sat by the window and stared at the fog. I knew my family. They weren't just playing control games. They were preparing something larger, something lawful, something strategic. They were laying legal mines under our future. The next day, we had a burner phone delivered to a P.O. box in town. Dr. Koenig advised us to document everything, every call, every note, every time we felt eyes on our backs. "You're building a case," she said, "even if you're not ready to file it." By week 17, Eleni was visibly showing. She cried while folding newborn socks one morning. "I'm not scared for me," she said, voice cracking. "I'm scared I'll love them so much I'll do anything, even give in." That was when I realized the real danger wasn't my family. It was the part of me still afraid of them. 3 days later, something changed. We received a single package with no return address. Inside, a silver rattle with the Whitaker family crest and a typed note. "Too late to run, Nora. Too late to hide. Too late to..." I showed it to Eleni, her eyes darkened. She picked up her phone and texted a single line to her sister, Paloma. "They've crossed the line. Call the judge." Paloma Morales, attorney for a major human rights firm, was a hurricane in a silk blouse. We'd kept her out of it out of fear. But now Eleni looked at me and said quietly, "You wanted peace. I want war." That night I opened my laptop and drafted a will. If anything happened to me, Eleni would have full guardianship. No Whitaker clause would touch our child. And the next morning, Eleni got a call from the prenatal clinic. Someone had attempted to access her file twice. Both attempts traced to a law office affiliated with my father's estate firm. My stomach dropped. They were trying to find out the delivery date. And just like that, our timeline wasn't safe anymore. The clinic confirmed it within hours. 2 separate access attempts, both flagged under internal fraud protocol, had originated from an external network linked to Whitaker and Bellamy, a legal consortium my father chaired. They hadn't even tried to mask it well. That's how confident they were, or maybe how entitled. I stared at the screen, my hands cold despite the fire crackling beside me. Eleni didn't speak. She just turned and pulled the curtains shut one by one like closing a stage. We weren't just in hiding anymore. We were being hunted. Paloma arrived at the cabin 2 days later. She came in a black wool coat, ankle boots flecked with snow, and a manila folder thick enough to stun a bear. "We file an injunction," she said before she even sat down. "Data privacy violation, medical harassment, anticipatory custody coercion. You've got at least 4 actionable torts, maybe 5 if we prove mental distress." Eleni looked at her like salvation had walked through the door. I felt relief too, but guilt wrapped tight around it. My silence had cost us this. My reluctance to confront them sooner had given them time to burrow through our lives like termites. Paloma opened her folder. "But you need leverage. They have money, reputation, and a 10-year head start. You need something that tilts the narrative, something public." She paused. "Do you still have the voicemail from Luke?" I blinked. The voicemail. I had it saved on a burner device, a single sentence. "You are not above the covenant, Nora. Bring the child or we'll bring the motion." Cold, controlled, a legal threat wrapped in family heritage. Paloma smiled. "Perfect. That's coercion. Let me handle that. What you two need to do now," she looked straight at me, "is bait them." Eleni choked on her tea. "You want us to, invite them back in?" "No," Paloma said calmly, "you invite you back in." It was reckless, dangerous, and utterly brilliant. The plan was simple. I'd return to Boston alone for my grandmother's memorial service, scheduled privately next week at the family estate. Agnes had passed 3 months ago, and her ashes were to be buried behind the chapel she helped build. It was a controlled environment. Family only. I'd go wired. The cabin would remain our safe zone. Eleni would stay with Paloma monitored. Meanwhile, Dr. Koenig had connected me with a legal tech specialist who'd trained me in covert audio recording. The goal wasn't confrontation. It was confirmation. We needed the Whitakers on tape admitting intent to interfere with the child's custody or safety. It had to come from their mouths. I didn't sleep much the night before I left. Eleni held me like I was a soldier going to war. "If something feels wrong," she whispered, "you leave. I don't care about recordings. I care about you." Her voice cracked at the edges. I pressed my forehead to hers. "I'll come home," I promised. The estate looked smaller than I remembered. Less fortress, more mausoleum. The inside was just as I left it, polished wood floors, family portraits staring like judges. Luke opened the door in a navy peacoat. He didn't smile. "Nice of you to show." The memorial was a quiet affair. Scripture, hymns. No eulogy from me, of course. Just Luke and my father. I kept my voice soft. I played obedient. Afterward, my mother cornered me near the parlor fireplace. Her breath smelled faintly of cloves. "I prayed you'd come," she said, gripping both my hands. "You can still choose to walk back into the fold. The child can be sanctified. Your errors forgiven." She was trembling slightly, not from grief, but from calculation. I nodded, lowered my eyes. "Tell me what to do." Later, as I excused myself to the upstairs bathroom, Luke followed me. He waited until I shut the door before speaking through it. "Don't think this buys you time. You are still bound. That baby carries our name, not hers. You think hiding up north changes that we've already spoken to the Department of Family Welfare. Anonymous reports go far, Nora." His voice was steady, casual. That was the terrifying part. I pressed my wrist against the sink, pretending to adjust my watch. The device recorded every word. I left before dusk. I didn't wait for dinner or dessert or the second round of prayer. I hugged no one, just nodded. As I walked out, my father's voice followed me. "You think you're safe because you ran, but safety isn't isolation, it's compliance." My hands shook on the steering wheel all the way back. Back in the cabin, Eleni and Paloma were waiting with laptops and flash drives. I uploaded the audio. The moment Luke mentioned the welfare department, Paloma leaned back slow. "There it is," she said. "Attempted weaponization of state systems. That's admissible. We had our shot." But before we could celebrate, my burner buzzed. One new voicemail. A robotic voice transcribed it. "Consider this your final warning. No more delays. Bring the child or we collect." And then a photo. Attached was an image of Eleni taken that very morning. She was on the porch of the cabin, one hand resting on her belly, smiling. The photo had been taken from the trees. They had found us. I didn't speak for a full minute after I saw the photo. My throat locked. Eleni was smiling, unaware, cradling her belly like it was still safe. But someone had been out there in our woods on our island, with a camera and a message. "We see you. We're closer than you think." I showed it to Eleni silently. Her body stiffened, then recoiled like she'd touched fire. Paloma reached for the phone, running the metadata. "Time-stamped this morning, 9:14 a.m., she said. "Same minute I left for town, meaning whoever took this knew your movements and mine." Her voice was tight-clipped, lawyer mode. But her fingers were shaking slightly. We were compromised. I ran outside. There were no sounds, no birds, no crunch of leaves, just wind moving slow through the manse. I circled the cabin looking for broken branches, footprints, anything. Nothing. Whoever it was knew what they were doing, not a single trail. Back inside, Eleni was pacing. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice clipped. "They found us once. They'll come again. And next time they won't be quiet." I agreed, but running again wasn't a solution. It was a delay, a retreat. Paloma called her firm's emergency protection line and arranged for a temporary safe house near Bar Harbor, government-connected off-record used for witnesses and sensitive clients. "We'll leave before sunrise," she said. "But tonight you two sleep in shifts, no lights, no patterns." Eleni curled into my chest that night, her breath shallow. "I feel like prey," she whispered. I stroked her hair. "You're a fortress," I said, and prayed I wasn't lying. We left at 4:10 a.m. No headlights, no phones on, just bags, burner devices, and a car Paloma borrowed from a friend of a friend. We arrived at the safe house, a converted inn with blackout curtains and high fences, just before noon. A caseworker named Daryl met us there. He looked like he belonged in a John Grisham novel, khakis, windbreaker, tired eyes. But he moved fast. Within an hour, he'd reviewed our audio evidence, filed the complaint with the Office of Civil Remedies, and triggered an internal review of Whitaker and Bellamy's data use credentials. By evening, we had an official notice a preliminary hearing had been scheduled in 10 days to determine whether the Whitakers' actions constituted unlawful coercion, breach of privacy, and preemptive interference with custody. 10 days. It felt like both a lifeline and a ticking bomb. Paloma spent the next week building the case. She cross-referenced voice prints, secured 2 affidavits from a clinic employee and Dr. Koenig, and drafted a full emergency restraining request. Meanwhile, I kept Eleni calm, or tried to. Her sleep became fractured. Nightmares. Her hands trembled when she buttoned her coat. "I don't want to bring a baby into this," she said one morning. "Into a world where being born is a legal war." I didn't know what to say. She was right. On day 7, a package arrived, hand-delivered, no postage. Inside a manila envelope. No note, just a flash drive. I hesitated. Paloma put on gloves, plugged it into her encrypted laptop. There were 4 video files. The first was footage of me, age 6, reciting scripture at church. My mother's voice whispered praise in the background. The second was Eleni's college protest speech against religious conditioning and architecture, a clip edited to make her sound militant. The third, my old therapy intake form from when I was 19, uploaded without consent, somehow pulled from an old records vault. It listed gender identity confusion as a phrase I'd written myself in despair. And the fourth was footage of Eleni asleep in the cabin, taken from the window from less than 5 feet away. I saw her shift in bed, curl tighter, oblivious. My knees buckled. "This is psychological warfare," Paloma said. "They're trying to establish a narrative of instability, extremism, unfitness." Her eyes narrowed. "And they're not just bluffing anymore. This is trial-grade material." Eleni stood still, one hand on her stomach. Then she turned to me. "No more hiding," she said. "I want to fight." That night, we recorded our own footage. A direct address, me and Eleni seated together, backs straight. No tears, no fear, just truth. We are Nora and Eleni. We are expecting a child. That child is not property, not legacy, not a symbol for any dynasty. We are human, and we are not alone. Paloma distributed the video to 6 media contacts under embargo, ready to release it only if the Whitakers escalated further. But they didn't wait. The next morning, we received a knock. It wasn't aggressive, just soft, steady. Daryl looked through the peephole, then turned to us. "It's a social worker," he said, "from Child Protective Services." He looked down at the clipboard the man was holding. "They're filing a claim of prenatal endangerment." The man standing outside the door looked harmless khakis, a CPS badge, soft-spoken. But the moment he said prenatal endangerment, I felt the air go razor sharp. Eleni's hand flew to her stomach as if shielding the baby from a word. I stepped forward, calm but deliberate. "May I ask the basis for this report?" The man glanced at his clipboard. We received an anonymous tip. Allegations of emotional instability, unmonitored pregnancy, and unsafe housing during gestation. His tone wasn't hostile. He wasn't the villain. But he was the weapon sharpened by someone else's hand. Paloma moved in fast ID, out voice clear. "My clients are under temporary protective relocation due to ongoing harassment and documented stalking. I have affidavits from 2 federal offices and a judge's order pending. If you intend to investigate, we'll comply, but all questions go through counsel." The man hesitated, then nodded. "I'll file this as a courtesy check. No removal, no further action unless escalated." Still, he left with photos of the kitchen emergency contact numbers and a copy of Eleni's prenatal records, which Paloma had wisely duplicated and watermarked. When the door clicked shut, I could feel Eleni's knees start to buckle. I caught her. Her skin was ice. Later that night, while Eleni slept finally deeply, I sat by the window watching snow flurry under the porch light. Paloma joined me with tea. "They're escalating because they're losing," she said. "This is desperation wrapped in authority." I looked at her. "What happens if they win?" She didn't answer right away. Then they establish a legal precedent. That heritage can override consent. That family covenant supersedes autonomy, and that's bigger than just you. The next morning, we filed an emergency restraining order against Luke, my parents, and 2 associated attorneys. Daryl delivered it by hand to the state judge assigned to our case. Within 48 hours, the court granted temporary protection, a block on access to any medical files, and a cease contact notice until the hearing. We breathed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't over, but for once the tide had turned. Or so we thought. 2 days before the hearing, while Paloma was preparing her opening statement, Eleni felt something strange. A cramp. Then another. She dismissed it at first. Pregnancy had its discomforts. But by 2:00 p.m., her face had gone pale and her breath turned shallow. "It feels like pulling," she whispered. I didn't wait. We drove straight to the regional hospital with Paloma tailing behind. The triage nurse was kind efficient. Within minutes, they had Eleni on monitors for fluids, started ultrasound tech on the way. The baby's heartbeat was steady, but there were signs of early labor tension. Nothing emergent, but enough to warrant overnight observation. Paloma sat with me in the hallway while Eleni rested. She spoke low so no one else could hear. "They could use this," she said. "They could frame it as a consequence of stress, unsafe environment, neglecting signs." Even if none of it's true, I closed my eyes. They'll twist anything. She nodded. So we twist back. That night, while Eleni slept under morphine and monitors, I recorded a video journal. I spoke plainly. About fear, about fighting systems that use love as a leash, about being a daughter turned witness, a partner turned shield. And about the line I would never cross giving in. I didn't know who I was speaking to. Maybe our child. Maybe the court. Maybe just myself. In the morning, Eleni was stable. The doctor-kind gray-haired gentle explained that stress was likely a trigger, but nothing irreversible had happened. We could go home with rest orders. Before leaving, he paused. "You two," he said, "you're doing better than most." Then added, "But the world you're fighting, that's old. It has teeth. Don't underestimate it." We returned to the safe house with quiet resolve. That night we slept in shifts again. And the night after, we packed our bags. Because in the morning, we were going to court. Paloma laid out the plan. She'd lead. I'd testify only if called. Eleni would remain in the back, shielded from press and cameras. We had 6 folders of evidence, 5 signed affidavits, and 3 minutes of audio that made my stomach twist every time I heard it. But the morning of the hearing, as we dressed in silence, my burner lit up with a message I didn't expect. It was from my sister. I hadn't heard from her in years. She was the family ghost. The one who signed the covenant without protest, married into it, disappeared inside it. But her text said this: "They have a backup plan. Custody motion sealed. I have access. Meet me tonight. 10 p.m. St. Arlene's." I showed it to Paloma. She froze. "They're going for emergency guardianship," she said. "They're trying to make you legally unfit before the baby is even born." I stared at the message again, my hands suddenly clammy. "Because St. Arlene's?" That was the church where my mother preached, and the place I swore I'd never set foot in again. Paloma hated the idea. You realize this could be a trap, right? She said, pacing across the motel carpet like it might catch fire. You haven't spoken to your sister in, 6 years, and suddenly she knows about a sealed custody motion and wants to meet at a church that's basically Whitaker Ground Zero. She wasn't wrong, but the message was unmistakably her. Emma, the only Whitaker who never condemned me outright, just disappeared into silence. I didn't trust her, but I trusted her enough to know she wouldn't reach out unless it was life or death. We decided I'd go alone, wearing a wire phone on silent but recording in my coat pocket. Paloma would wait in the car, engine running. Eleni stayed back, angry, exhausted, and scared. You promised me no more solo missions, she said quietly. I knelt beside her, resting my head against her knees. I know, but if they're moving through a secret court, we need that file. We need someone inside. She didn't argue, just handed me the locket she'd kept since we met, a tiny silver disc with a pressed fern inside. Wear this, she said. Bring me back proof, and yourself. St. Arlene's looked exactly as I remembered. White pillars, brass handles, a single cross backlit in stained glass like a warning. I slipped through the side door and stepped into a hallway that smelled like pine oil and old prayers. The sanctuary was empty pews, polished altar candles unlit. I found Emma in the back vestibule wearing a charcoal coat and clutching a leather folder like it might explode. She looked older, thinner. But her eyes, those sad gray mirrors of our mothers, held something I hadn't seen since we were kids. A flicker of rebellion. You have 10 minutes, she whispered. I didn't speak, I just stared. I know what they're doing, she said. Luke filed the guardianship petition last week under emergency religious exemption. They're claiming you and Eleni are mentally unfit due to emotional instability. Sexualence for 10 minutes before either of us breathed. That night we scanned everything. Paloma grinned like a war strategist. This is gold, she said. We can dismantle the whole petition before it hits court. They committed procedural fraud, accessed sealed juvenile files, and misrepresented psychological history. They overplayed. The next day, Paloma filed an emergency motion to bar the guardianship request and countersue for malicious prosecution. She included Emma's documents, sealed affidavits, and voice recordings from Luke. The judge responded in under 6 hours. A preliminary hearing was now scheduled for Friday morning. I found Eleni in the nursery we'd started setting up. She was folding a tiny blanket with shaking hands. We're going to be okay, I told her. We have proof. We have people. She looked up at me, soft and tired. Can I believe it this time? I took her hand. You don't have to. Just hold on until Friday. But Thursday night, something happened that none of us saw coming. Eleni's phone rang. Unknown number, one ring, then silence. And then a voicemail. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't noise. It was my mother, reading scripture. And the child shall be called out from among the disobedient and made whole by fire. Then silence. Then the sound of a match striking. Eleni replayed the voicemail 5 times. Each time her face sank further into something I couldn't reach. My mother's voice was calm, even reverent, like she was delivering a benediction. But the words, that final line, and the sound of the match snap, hiss, silence. It was chilling. I sat beside Eleni on the edge of the bed. She's trying to scare us, I whispered. It's theater. That's what she does. But even I didn't believe it fully. Eleni didn't respond. She just slowly handed me the phone and said, play it again, louder. Paloma analyzed the audio, no background hum. Could be a studio mic. She wanted the match to land. She wanted the silence. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing. We file this with the court. It's symbolic intimidation. It supports our restraining order, and it might just flip a neutral judge. But I wasn't thinking like a lawyer anymore. I was thinking like a daughter, raised in rituals I thought I'd escaped. That scripture wasn't random. It was from a covenant sermon given during disciplinary trials. Fire was never metaphorical. The next morning was the hearing. We arrived early, me, Eleni, Paloma, and Daryl. The courthouse was small, half-empty, wood-paneled, and hushed. But the energy was electric. Luke was already there in a charcoal suit and tie like always. My father sat beside him, hands folded, expression unreadable. My mother didn't show. The judge was a woman, mid-50s, no-nonsense eyes. She read fast, asked sharply, and missed nothing. Paloma opened with evidence, the audio files, the video threats, the guardianship attempt, the sealed motion Emma had leaked. When the voicemail played aloud in court, people shifted in their seats. I watched the judge's fingers tighten slightly on her pen. Then Luke stood up to respond. He spoke like a polished machine composure piety concern. He framed everything as care we only acted out of spiritual and familial duty. The child is part of a sacred legacy. We feared for its exposure to instability, to a value system that rejects faith, tradition, and family. The judge cut him off. Mr. Whitaker, you accessed private medical files, attempted to preemptively override parental custody, and initiated a sealed emergency guardianship before the child was born. This is not spiritual care. This is legal overreach. Luke tried to recover. My mother is deeply grieved. Her intentions were misunderstood. Paloma stood up slow and steady. Your Honor, may I ask to play the final voicemail one more time? Permission granted. The match crackled. The courtroom went silent again. And in that stillness, I saw something in the judge's eyes, shift recognition maybe, of how belief becomes control, of how family becomes a weapon. After deliberation, the judge issued a ruling. The guardianship petition was denied with prejudice. The restraining order extended for 1 year. All future contact from the Whitaker family required written consent. Any further interference would trigger criminal proceedings under Title 18 harassment statutes. It was done, the gavel dropped. And still I didn't breathe, not until we were outside. Eleni let out a sob she didn't mean to. I wrapped my arms around her belly and whispered, "We made it. You're safe. The baby's safe." Paloma took a call, then stepped away. When she came back, her face was pale. That voicemail, she said, it wasn't the last one. I blinked. What do you mean? She handed me her phone. A new audio file had been forwarded to her anonymous inbox. No number, no trace, just one clip sent 15 minutes after the ruling. It was my mother again. This time she wasn't calm. Her voice was breathless, ragged, almost frantic. You may have the court, but you don't have the covenant. And the covenant is older than law, older than birth, then static. Then a sound I hadn't heard in over a decade. Hymns, congregational, dozens of voices chanting. And in the background, one voice rising above them all. My mother's, calling the child by a name we never gave. The hymn was one I hadn't heard in years, Bind Us Ever, Lord. We used to sing it after covenant rituals. Arms linked, eyes shut tight, like if we sang loud enough, the world outside would disappear. But this time, it was different. It sounded hollow, performed, like a pageant of grief with no audience. Except, they'd made one. Eleni gripped my hand as we listened to my mother's voice ring out through Paloma's phone. Her chant was clearer now, more urgent, each syllable laced with possession. She didn't say the baby. She said the name. Not our name, not one we'd chosen. A name from the covenant records. A name I'd refused when I walked away. It meant something: ownership, consecration. Paloma traced the metadata. Broadcast location routed through 2 IP scramblers, but it ends at a compound outside Worcester. The place the family holds private retreats. Isolated, no cell tower within range. But if this was streamed, they wanted us to hear it, I said. It was a message. Eleni was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at me and said something I didn't expect. I want you to record a blessing. I blinked. Well, a new name, she said softly. One we choose, one we protect. You said the covenant names mean control, then we give our child freedom. We sat at the kitchen table that night. Candles lit, both of us worn and wide-eyed. I spoke into the mic to our child. May you grow in truth, in peace, and in the name that was never stolen but given freely. Your name is Alar. Eleni followed, her voice soft and warm. Your name is light that doesn't burn, flame that doesn't consume. Your name is Alar and you are ours. We encrypted the file and sent it to 3 cloud backups, 1 printed transcript to our lawyer, and 1 copy sealed in a safety deposit box. Not because we were paranoid, because we'd learned. 3 weeks later, Alar was born. Labor was rough, 32 hours of scare with the cord, one NICU doctor called in at midnight. But Eleni was fierce. I held her through every contraction, every shiver, every scream. When Alar finally arrived, squalling and small and entirely real, I cried so hard I couldn't see straight. He was perfect, a little storm wrapped in cotton. We stayed in the hospital under a protective alias, guards at the door, no visitors, no flowers. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Until day 3. Paloma came in just after dawn, her face gray. They're calling in a religious exemption appeal, she said. They filed a motion in federal court arguing that the covenant charter predates your parental rights under First Amendment grounds. They want to claim constructive custody through ancestral guardianship. It sounded insane, but legally it was just plausible enough to get a hearing. They won't get custody, she added quickly. But if they win even partial recognition, they could petition for naming rights. Medical input, visitation. I looked at Alar, tiny asleep, unaware that people with clean suits and bloody hearts were still trying to brand him. No, I said. Paloma hesitated. There's one more thing. She slid over a small envelope, inside a handwritten note. My mother's handwriting. It said, come to the chapel alone. I'll surrender the charter, but only if it's you. Eleni stared at me. You're not going. But I already knew I would. We arranged it like an op. Paloma and Daryl tracked the property boundaries. Eleni stayed with Alar guarded. I wore a mic, a GPS tag, and carried the letter in my coat. I arrived at the chapel just after sunset. Candles flickered inside rows of pews, empty altar bare. My mother was already there, dressed in ceremonial black. Her hair was looser than I remembered. Her hands trembled only slightly as she handed me a sealed scroll. The original charter, she said, signed by my father, and his before him, nullified if destroyed in presence of blood witness. She gestured toward a basin. A blade rested beside it. I'm not cutting myself for this, I said. She smiled. It only takes a drop. I stared at her. Why no? She paused. Because I've already lost you, but I won't lose the bloodline. I stepped forward, took the scroll, ripped it in half, then again, then again. She didn't stop me. She didn't cry. She just turned away and began to sing. Not a hymn. A lullaby. The one she used to sing when I was 5. When she still thought love meant holding, not owning. I left without looking back. We drove through the night back to the cabin. No court motion ever surfaced again. No calls. No hymns. Just quiet. Eleni and I kept things small. We stayed offline. Built a new life. I took freelance cases. She planted a garden. Alar grew loud, curious, laughing with his whole chest. One day he asked, why don't I have a grandma? I said, you do. But we call her something different. What? I thought for a moment. Then I answered, we call her the lesson. Story 2. My parents took me to court for buying a house. Not a joke. I spent 8 years grinding in commercial real estate, saving every penny, skipping vacations and living cheap. Then finally bought my first home. Their response, that house should have gone to your sister. I laughed until I realized they weren't kidding. So I took my revenge and made sure they'd never forget who earned it. Buckle up, Reddit. This is going to be a long one, but I promise it's worth every word. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. Though, honestly, after everything that happened, I don't really care who knows this story anymore. I, 31 male, work in commercial real estate investment and just closed on an $850,000 house in one of the most sought-after neighborhoods in the city. 4 bedrooms, 3-car garage backyard big enough to host the Super Bowl. The kind of place I dreamed about growing up. And our cramped split level where I shared a bedroom with my entitled sister until I was 16. Let me paint you the family picture because context matters. Here, my dad works middle management at an insurance company. Decent money, but nothing spectacular. Pulling in maybe $75,000 annually. My mom's a part-time dental hygienist working 3 days a week, bringing home another $35,000. They're solidly middle-class, comfortable, but not wealthy by any stretch. But the model was, they made a decision early on that my sister Victoria, 33 now, was their precious princess who deserved the world. And I was just the spare kid who could figure things out on his own. Classic golden child versus scapegoat dynamic that you write about in psychology books. Victoria got dance lessons, piano lessons, art classes, summer camps, private tutoring. When her grades tanked, I got told to go play outside and figure it out yourself. When I was 17 and wanted to take the SATs, I had to pay the $60 fee myself for my job at the local auto shop. Meanwhile, Victoria got a brand new BMW for her 18th birthday because she needed reliable transportation for college. But here's the thing. Instead of getting bitter and resentful like some people might, I used it as pure motivation. Started working construction during high school summers when I was 16. Doing grunt work for $12 an hour in scorching heat saved every single penny and put myself through state school studying finance. Worked 30-plus hours a week at various jobs. Campus bookstore restaurant server weekend construction gigs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA that I'm still proud of today. Got my real estate license junior year and started flipping contracts on weekends, making small commissions that added up over time. After graduation, I grounded out for 8 years in commercial real estate, started as the coffee-making copier running guy and worked my way up to closing million-dollar deals. Last year, I made $180,000 base plus bonuses. This year, I'm tracking toward $220,000. Victoria. She got a communications degree. My parents paid $160,000 for it. Yes, you read that right. $160,000. Spent 2 years finding herself in California living in expensive apartments they funded. Came back with 0 job prospects and decided she was going to be a lifestyle influencer. For the past 5 years, she's been making maybe $800 monthly from her Instagram, where she posts artsy coffee photos and steals motivational quotes from Pinterest. Her content is exactly what you'd expect: generic inspiration posts, mirror selfies, and the occasional sponsored post for sketchy diet supplements. That probably pays her in free product rather than actual money. She lives in my parents' basement and still drives that 15-year-old BMW they bought her. So last month, I finally pulled the trigger on something I'd been planning and saving for over 3 years. Buying a house in Riverside Heights, the exclusive area where all the doctors, lawyers, and successful business owners live. You know, the neighborhood tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, houses that actually have character. Instead of looking like cookie-cutter suburban boxes, $850 to $1,000. Purchase price, which in today's market for that area was actually reasonable, I put down $170,000. Cash. Exactly 20 to avoid PMI and got a mortgage for the rest at 2.8% because my credit score is 798. And my debt-to-income ratio qualified me easily with room to spare. The day I got the keys, I took a photo holding them up in front of the house and posted it on Facebook. Dreams do come true when you work for them. Got 200 plus likes and tons of congratulations from college friends, work colleagues, former classmates. Even some of my old construction buddies, people were genuinely excited for me because they knew how hard I'd worked to get here. The comments were full of support. So proud of you. Visit a bottle theater component placement. Can't wait to see the housewarming party. My parents didn't like or comment. Should have been my first red flag. 3 days later, my phone rings. Dad's voice. We need to have a family meeting about this house situation. What house situation, I ask, genuinely confused. You know what I'm talking about. Your mother and I have been discussing it, and we think you need to reconsider some things. I'm thinking maybe they want to see it or plan a housewarming party. Oh, how naive I was. I drive over that evening and walk into what felt like an intervention you'd see in a bad TV drama. Parents sitting side by side on the couch like a united front. Victoria positioned in the chair across from them looking smug and entitled. And there's an empty chair facing all of them. Like I'm about to get court-martialed by my own family. The whole setup was clearly planned. They'd obviously discussed this ahead of time and decided on their strategy. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere was tense, and I could immediately tell this wasn't going to be the congratulatory conversation I'd naively expected. Dad starts, Son, we've been talking as a family, and we think the right thing to do would be for Victoria to have the house. I actually laughed. What are you talking about? Mom jumps in. This is exactly the attitude we're talking about. Victoria is struggling. She can't afford to move out. And you're doing very well for yourself. You could easily buy another house. Then Victoria speaks. And this part still makes my blood pressure spike every time I think about it. I've always dreamed of having a house like that, and honestly, I think I deserve it more than you do. I've been through so much emotional trauma trying to build my brand and establish myself as an influencer. And you've had everything handed to you with your corporate job and steady income. You don't understand the struggles of being a creative entrepreneur in today's economy. It's not fair that you get to live in luxury while I'm stuck in the basement trying to make ends meet. I stared at her in complete disbelief. This woman who's never worked a real day in her life, whose biggest stress is choosing between Instagram filters and deciding which inspirational quote to steal from Pinterest, whose most challenging daily decision is whether to order DoorDash or have mom make her a sandwich, just told me I've had everything handed to me. The audacity was breathtaking. Here I was, someone who'd worked construction in 100-degree heat, pulled all-nighters studying while working multiple jobs, lived on ramen noodles for years to save money. And she thought I was the privileged one. You're all insane, I said, and walked out. Dad yelled after me. This conversation isn't over. Family takes care of family. I thought that was the end of it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. 2 weeks after that bizarre family meeting, I'm returning from the gym and there's a process server waiting by my front door. Professional-looking woman in a suit. Hands me an envelope like she's delivering the Hope Diamond. I open it right there on my doorstep and I swear I thought I was hallucinating. My own parents were suing me for my house. The house I bought with my own money. The lawsuit was 1 page of pure fantasy. Claim 1. I owed them $420,000 in child-rearing expenses and educational investment. Claim 2. Victoria was financially disadvantaged due to the economic climate affecting social media entrepreneurs. I had to read that twice. Claim 3. As their son, I had a moral and legal obligation to ensure family financial stability claimed. For the house purchase was made using foundational skills and values they provided, making them entitled to the asset. The relief sought transfer of the house to Victoria, with me continuing to pay the mortgage for 36 months plus $15,000 in emotional damages for the stress I caused by being selfish. I called my lawyer friend and read him the whole thing. Dead silence for 30s then, bro. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. But you need to take this seriously because crazy people can still win if you don't fight back properly. I probably should have hired him, but I was so angry I wanted to handle this myself. I've always been good at research and documentation, and honestly, I wanted the satisfaction of beating them using my own skills. The family drama started immediately. Victoria went full victim mode on social media, posted a long Instagram story about toxic family members who put money over love and how she was fighting for what's morally right. She had about 3,000 followers at the time, mostly bots and middle-aged women who followed her for coffee photos. But here's where it gets entertaining. She started a TikTok series called My Brother Stole My Future, where she'd cry on camera, talking about how she'd already picked out furniture for her house and how I was destroying the family. Some videos got decent views because people love train wrecks. My parents went nuclear on Facebook. Mom wrote this essay about sacrificing her career to raise me and how I was abandoning the family in their time of need. Dad shared articles about successful children who forgot their roots. The cherry on top. Victoria created a GoFundMe called Help Me Fight for My Family Home. She claimed I had manipulated the legal system and needed $30,000 for legal fees to get her house back. She raised $847 in 2 weeks, mostly from relatives. My Aunt Dad's sister became their chief flying monkey. She commented on every social media post about how ungrateful I was and how Victoria deserved stability. She even called my office trying to get me fired, telling my boss I was mentally unstable and had abandoned my family responsibilities. Thankfully, my boss thought it was hilarious and just gave me a heads up. The harassment escalated quickly. They started driving by my house at odd hours. Victoria would post Instagram stories from her car outside my neighborhood with captions like, "Just thinking about what could have been, and some people get everything handed to them." I installed a Ring doorbell and security cameras. Within a week, I caught Victoria trying to peek in my windows. At 11 p.m., my aunt taking pictures of my house from the street, and my parents sitting in their car in my driveway for 20 minutes, just watching. During discovery, I had to provide financial documents proving I bought the house myself. Meanwhile, I requested their financial records to show they had no claim to the property. That's when I discovered something fascinating. My parents had been lying about their financial situation. They weren't struggling. They had over $200,000 in savings and investments. But they'd been telling everyone, including Victoria, that they were broke. Victoria's records were even better. This woman who claimed she was financially disadvantaged had been receiving $2,500 monthly from my parents for 3 years. Plus, they were paying her car insurance, phone bill, health insurance, and letting her live rent-free. She was making $800 monthly from Instagram and getting $2,500 monthly from my parents. But somehow I was the villain for not giving her my house. The discovery phase took 4 months. The family harassment continued. Victoria making TikToks outside my house, my parents showing up at places they knew I'd be always watching, never speaking. But I was documenting everything. Photos, videos, screenshots, bank records, building a case not just to keep my house, but to expose what manipulative people they really were. Court got scheduled for February 3rd months to prepare for war. The 3 months before court were like watching a slow-motion car crash where the car was my family's reputation and I had the best seat in the house. Victoria's TikTok series, My Brother Stole My Future, started getting attention, but not the supportive kind she expected. Comments were asking basic questions like, why don't you get a job and how is it his fault you don't own a house? Instead of answering logically, she made response videos crying about not everyone understanding the struggles of building a personal brand and how some people are born with privilege. But the comments got even more brutal. My favorite girl, your brother worked construction, and you lived in your parents' basement. What privilege? Victoria doubled down. She started making videos about financial abuse and family members who gaslight you into thinking you don't deserve success. She even made one where she drove to my neighborhood and filmed herself crying in the car about how she should be living here instead of in a basement. The video got 50,000 views, but for all the wrong reasons, people started response videos roasting her. Someone found her LinkedIn showing she'd been unemployed for 5 years. Another person found old Instagram posts where she bragged about designer bags and vacations. My parents bought her. The internet was doing my research for me. Meanwhile, my parents hired a second lawyer after the first one told them the case was unwinnable and they should drop it. The new guy was more expensive but willing to take their money. Other family members started getting dragged in. My uncle called to trying to play mediator. Can't you just give her the down payment money instead? You can afford another house and it would keep the peace. I told him exactly what I told everyone else. I'm not giving anyone anything. I earned this house. If Victoria wants a house, she can get a job and buy one. My grandmother called crying, saying the family was falling apart. That one hurt because I actually respect her. But I held firm. Christmas was particularly entertaining. I got uninvited, obviously, but I found out later that Victoria spent the entire dinner talking about her house and showing people photos she'd taken from the street. She was making redecoration plans and discussing where she'd put her art studio. My cousin was there and told me she literally said, "Once I get the house, I'm throwing a huge housewarming party to celebrate justice being served." This woman was already living there in her head while they were busy playing victim on social media. I was doing actual work. I hired a forensic accountant to analyze their financial records from Discovery. What we found was beautiful. My parents had been lying to Victoria about being broke while sitting on $200,000 plus in assets. They'd been paying her $2,500 monthly for 3 years, $90,000 total. They'd bought her car, paid for vacations, medical bills, everything. Victoria had never filed taxes on the money they gave her. They'd taken out a $50,000 home equity loan to fund the lawsuit. The best part, Victoria had been claiming she was an independent entrepreneur on social media, while taking $30,000 yearly from mommy and daddy. I also discovered my aunt had been pushing for the lawsuit from the beginning. She never liked me and was helping pay their legal fees 3 weeks before court. Victoria made her biggest mistake. She posted a TikTok shopping for furniture for my new house expensive store, picking out couches and dining sets. Talking about manifesting the life I deserve. Someone screen recorded it and sent it to me. The comments were brutal. "This is embarrassing. Imagine being 33 and acting like this. Your brother dodged a bullet." Victoria actually responded to hate comments, making it worse. 2 weeks before court, they made their final push. Parents Victoria and my aunt showed up at my house Sunday morning while I was working in the garage. I didn't knock, just walked up like they owned the place. Dad started, "Son, we can still resolve this without court. Just do the right thing." Victoria was walking around my property like she was already the owner, taking pictures and discussing where she'd plant flowers. I told them to get off my property or I'd call police. My aunt started yelling about how ungrateful I was. Victoria started crying about me destroying her dreams, and Mom kept repeating, "Family should help family." I went inside, locked the door, and called 911. By the time police arrived, they thought they were gone, but I filed a report anyway. That night, Victoria posted an Instagram story about how I called police on my own family and how some people will do anything to avoid doing what's right. The comments were not supportive. Court was Monday morning. I spent Sunday organizing evidence, financial records, social media screenshots, trespassing photos. The forensic accountants report everything. I was ready to destroy them. Court day felt like Christmas morning. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying 2 briefcases full of evidence. I felt like a prosecutor going after a crime family. Except I was fighting for something already. Mine. My parents showed up with Victoria, my aunt, and about 6 other relatives for moral support. They were dressed like they were attending a funeral, all coordinated in black and navy blue. Victoria was carrying a folder with Pinterest printouts of interior designs. She literally brought decoration ideas to court like she was already planning to move in. Their new lawyer looked nervous. First time seeing all my evidence, and I could tell he was realizing what a disaster he'd gotten into. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every type of family drama imaginable. She started by asking both sides to state their case briefly. Their lawyer went first. "Your Honor, my clients are loving parents who invested heavily in their son's development and now seek equitable distribution of the benefits of that investment. The defendant's sister is in financial distress and needs stable housing, while the defendant has means to easily acquire another property. My turn. Your Honor, I am the sole owner of the property in question. I purchased it entirely with funds I earned and saved through my own employment. No other party contributed to this purchase in any way. This lawsuit is an attempt to steal my legally acquired property based on the false premise that adult children owe their parents ownership of their assets." The judge nodded. "Let's see the evidence. They went first and it was beautiful watching them hang themselves. Evidence item 1, baby photos of me as proof of their investment." "Judge, how do baby photos relate to property ownership?" Their lawyer. "They show the emotional and financial investment my clients made." "Judge, are you claiming parenting expenses create ownership rights in adult children's property?" Awkward silence. Evidence item 2. Victoria. Student loan statements, $180,000 total. "Judge, who is responsible for these loans?" Victoria. "I am, but I can't afford payments because of the economic situation affecting influencers." "Judge, what is your current employment status?" Victoria. "I'm an entrepreneur building my personal brand on social media." Judge, what income does that generate, Victoria? It's not about income right now. It's about building audience engagement. Judge, so you're unemployed. Victoria, I'm self-employed. Evidence item 3. Victoria's business plan for turning my house into a creative space and content studio. Judge, did the defendant agree to this business plan? Their lawyer, no, Your Honor, but it shows how the property could be better utilized. Judge, by someone who doesn't own it. Then my turn. Evidence item 1. Complete financial records showing I purchased the house entirely with my own money. Judge, this clearly shows sole ownership. Any dispute about these facts? Their lawyer, no, Your Honor. But Judge. But what evidence? Item 2. The forensic accountant's report showing my parents had $200,000 plus in assets while claiming to be broke, Judge. So the plaintiffs misrepresented their financial situation. Me, yes, Your Honor. They told everyone they couldn't help Victoria while secretly giving her toddy $500 monthly evidence. Item 3. Bank records showing Victoria received $90,000 from my parents over 3 years. Judge 2. Victoria, were you aware you were receiving $30,000 yearly from your parents? Victoria, that wasn't income. That was family support. Judge, did you report the support on tax returns? Victoria 1, I don't think I had to judge. You received $90,000 in unreported income while claiming financial hardship. Evidence item 4, screenshots of Victoria's TikTok videos, including the furniture shopping one. The judge actually watched Victoria shopping for furniture for her new house. Judge, did you create this video, Victoria? Yes, but I was just visualizing my future. Judge, you were shopping for furniture for a house you don't own while in litigation. Victoria, I was manifesting success evidence. Item 5, photos and police reports of them trespassing. Judge, did you enter the defendant's property without permission, Dad? Where his parents? We were trying to resolve this as family. Judge, on property you're currently suing to obtain. The judge recessed for 15 minutes, returned and delivered the most satisfying 10 minutes of my life. This case is not only without merit, it borders on harassment. The defendant purchased property with his own funds. The plaintiffs have no legal claim whatsoever. Furthermore, the plaintiff Victoria has demonstrated a concerning pattern of entitlement and financial irresponsibility while receiving substantial undisclosed support from her parents. The defendant has shown remarkable restraint facing what appears to be a coordinated campaign of harassment. Case dismissed. She even awarded me attorney's fees and costs despite me representing myself. Victoria started sobbing in the courtroom. My aunt started yelling about judicial bias. My parents just sat there like someone had died. But the real show started outside the courthouse steps. Scene was better than reality TV. Victoria was having a complete breakdown, ugly crying and screaming about how the judge didn't understand and how I had manipulated everyone. My aunt was going full tantrum mode, yelling at random people about corrupt legal systems and how family means nothing anymore. Security had to tell her to calm down or leave. My parents looked shell-shocked. I think they genuinely believed they'd win. The best part was people walking by recognizing Victoria from her TikToks. College girls stopped and one said, "Oh my gosh, is that the girl who thinks her brother should give her his house?" They started recording her meltdown. Victoria noticed and screamed at them to stop filming, which made them feel more obviously. I just walked to my car and left. Victory felt good, but I knew this wasn't over. Within 24 hours, Victoria posted a 10-minute TikTok rant about corrupt judges and rigged courts. She claimed I had bribed or manipulated the judge and was going to appeal. Comments were brutal. Take the L and get a job. This is embarrassing. Your brother doesn't owe you anything. Victoria doubled down, making more videos about fighting injustice and exposing corruption in family court. My parents started their own social media campaign. Mom posted on Facebook about how I had chosen money over family. Dad shared articles about ungrateful children and declining family values. Their friends weren't having it. People who'd known me since childhood started commenting with support. I remember when he worked 2 jobs for college while Victoria got everything handed to her. This boy has always been responsible and hardworking. Maybe if you treated your children equally, this wouldn't have happened. My aunt tried organizing a family boycott of me. She called relatives trying to get them to cut contact until he does the right thing. It backfired spectacularly. My cousin told her exactly what everyone was thinking. "You're an idiot. He bought a house with his own money. Nobody owes Victoria anything just because she's too lazy to work." My grandmother called my parents and told them they should be ashamed. She said she was proud of me for standing up to bullies, even family ones. But harassment didn't stop. Victoria started driving by daily, always recording. She'd park across the street making TikToks about how she should be living here. My parents began showing up at my work again, sitting in the parking lot hoping to run into me. When that failed, they started calling the office about family emergencies. My boss finally blocked their numbers. The final straw came 3 weeks after court. I came home to find Victoria in my backyard taking measurements and making sketches. She'd climbed over my fence and was planting garden beds and patios. When she saw me, she didn't run. She said, "I'm just planning for when this gets sorted out properly." The legal system failed, but justice will prevail eventually. I called police. She got arrested for trespassing. That night, she posted a TikTok from the police station crying about how I had called cops on family and was using the system to abuse. Her comments were not sympathetic. Something interesting started happening around this time. The constant stress was destroying my parents' marriage. My cousin told me they were fighting constantly, blaming each other. Dad thought they should drop it and reconcile. Mom was convinced they should keep fighting because Victoria deserves justice. Victoria was pushing them to appeal and sue me for harassment. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Photos of Victoria trespassing, screenshots of social media posts, records of workplace harassment, everything. I was building a case, but not for what they expected. I realized these people would never stop. They'd never accept being wrong. They'd keep harassing me until someone made them face real consequences. So I decided to give them exactly what they were asking for, justice, just not the kind they expected. While my family was busy destroying their reputation and escalating harassment, I was quietly working on something that would end this permanently, working in commercial real estate. You learn about people's financial situations. You also make connections with lawyers, accountants, and other professionals who specialize in solving problems. After Victoria's trespassing arrest, I had a conversation with my lawyer friend, not about suing my family. I didn't want their money. I wanted something better. Accountability. What if I suspected someone was committing tax fraud, identity theft, and running fraudulent fundraising campaigns? I asked. He smiled. I'd say that sounds like something the IRS and FBI might find interesting. Here's what I discovered during my investigation. Victoria's tax situation. She'd been receiving $2,500 monthly from my parents for 3 years, $90,000 total, and never reported it as income. She also claimed to be a business owner on applications while having no legitimate business income. GoFundMe. Me fraud. Victoria's fundraising campaign claimed I had stolen a family home and she needed money for legal fees. She raised money under false pretenses and used most for personal expenses, not legal costs. Identity issues. Victoria had been using my parents' address for credit applications while claiming different addresses elsewhere. She'd also used my information trying to get on mortgage pre-approval for our house, my parents' financial lies. They'd been claiming financial hardship while sitting on $200,000 plus in assets. They'd also taken out the home equity loan under questionable circumstances. But the real treasure was Victoria's social media obsession. She documented everything. I went through months of her Instagram stories, TikToks, Facebook posts, and Snapchats. This woman had created a digital paper trail of her entire scam videos of her spending GoFundMe money on clothes and restaurants. Posts about receiving family support while claiming independence. Screenshots of her planning to flip my house for profit once she got it. Messages with friends about how she was going to take my brother for everything. The cherry on top. She'd posted a TikTok showing herself filling out credit applications using my parents' information and income to qualify for bigger loans. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, financial records, social media evidence, legal documents, the works. Then I sent copies to the IRS tax fraud, the FBI wire fraud for GoFundMe, the State Attorney General, fraudulent fundraising, the Credit Bureau's identity fraud attempts. GoFundMe, Emmy's fraud department, Instagram and TikTok. Harassment and fraudulent content. Then I waited while investigations started. Victoria kept digging deeper. She started a new fundraising campaign on a different platform claiming she needed money for an appeal. She was also selling personalized videos on Cameo complaining about her situation for $25 each. My parents were still harassing me but also fighting constantly. The stress was destroying their marriage and finances. The lawsuit had cost over $30,000 plus ongoing costs of Victoria's lifestyle. My aunt was still running her mouth on social media but fewer people were listening. Then dominoes started falling. Victoria's new fundraising campaign got shut down within a week. The platform had been alerted to her previous fraud and banned her permanently. Her social media account started getting suspended. Instagram took down her account for harassment and fraudulent content. TikTok followed. Snapchat suspended her for community violations. Victoria was melting down about censorship and being silenced for telling truth, but had no platform left to complain on. Next, my parents got a letter from the IRS audit notice. Full financial review going back 3 years, including questions about the $90,000 in unreported payments to Victoria and circumstances around their home equity loan. Victoria got her own letter days later. The IRS wanted to discuss her income reporting discrepancies and business ownership claims, but the best part was yet to come. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit opened an investigation into Victoria's GoFundMe fraud. Wire fraud is a federal crime, and she'd crossed state lines since people from multiple states had donated. When FBI agents showed up at my parents' house to interview Victoria, she completely panicked. She called me for the first time since the lawsuit, crying and begging me to make this stop. "I don't know what you're talking about," I told her. "Maybe you should get a lawyer." The investigation took 3 months. During that time, my family's harassment stopped completely. They were too busy dealing with lawyers and accountants to bother me. Victoria had to move back with my parents because she couldn't afford rent without social media income. My parents had to sell their boat and downsize retirement plans to pay legal fees. My aunt stopped her social media campaign after her employer received a complaint about her online harassment. Small-town gossip spreads fast and her reputation was shot. Meanwhile, I was living my best life, got promoted at work, was dating an amazing woman, hosting regular game nights at my house, the house I bought with my own money. But I wasn't done yet. The best part was still coming 6 months after the court case. My phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Dad's voice, and he sounded completely broken. "Son, we need to talk. Can you come over, please?" Part of me wanted to hang up, but curiosity won. What could possibly make these people reach out? After everything, I drove to their house and found a scene that was beautiful in its karmic justice. Their new car, Mom's 2018 Camry, was gone, sold to pay legal fees. Victoria's BMW was in the driveway with a boot on it from unpaid parking tickets. Inside, the house looked smaller, shabbier. They'd sold furniture to cover expenses. The big screen TV was gone. Even some of Mom's jewelry had disappeared. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years and 6 months. Victoria sat at the kitchen table with papers everywhere, looking completely defeated. "What's this about?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. The FBI, they're recommending charges against Victoria: wire fraud, tax evasion, identity theft. She's looking at 3 to 5 years in federal prison. Victoria started crying. "I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just angry and jealous and made stupid decisions." Mom jumped in. "We've been to 3 lawyers and they all say the same thing. The evidence against her is overwhelming. The only thing that might help is if the victims, if you were willing to speak on her behalf." I almost laughed. "Let me get this straight. You sue me for my house, harassed me for months, and now you want me to help Victoria avoid prison?" Dad nodded miserably. "We know we messed up. We know we were wrong about everything. We're begging you. She's still your sister." Victoria looked up with swollen eyes. "I'll do anything. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back. I'll make a public apology. Anything. Just please don't let me go to prison." But I needed to hear the whole story. "What else?" I asked. Mom sighed. "The IRS audit. We owe $67,000 in back taxes and penalties. The payments to Victoria, the home equity loan, some other issues. They found we have to liquidate almost everything. We're losing the house," Dad added quietly. 37 years we've lived here and we have to sell it to pay what we owe. We'll be lucky to break even after all debts." Victoria sobbed harder. "It's all my fault. I destroyed our family because I was jealous of your success. I thought I deserved what you earned, and I turned our parents against you." I looked around the room at these 3 people who had made my life miserable for months. They were broken, financially ruined, and facing serious legal consequences for their greed and entitlement. It was exactly what they deserved. "You want to know what I think I said? I think this is the first time in Victoria's life she's facing real consequences for her actions. I think you two spent 30+ years enabling her entitled behavior, and now you're all learning what happens when that attitude meets reality." Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not done. You sued me for a house I bought with my own money. You harassed me at work. You trespassed on my property. You tried to destroy my reputation on social media. And now you want me to help you." Victoria was hyperventilating. "Please, I'm begging you. I'll never bother you again. I swear, I'll disappear from your life completely." Mom added, "We'll sign something legally binding. We'll never contact you again, never ask for anything, if you just help us." This one time I pretended to consider it while they sat in desperate silence. Here's what's going to happen, I finally said. Victoria is going to face the consequences of her crimes. You two are going to face the consequences of enabling her. And I'm going to go home to my house and get on with my life. Victoria screamed, "You can't just let me go to prison. I'm your sister." "You're a stranger who happens to share some DNA with me," I replied. "You made your choices. Live with them." Mom tried once more. "What if we paid you back? What if we gave you money?" I laughed. "With what money? You're broke, remember? Besides, I don't want your money. I have my own." I walked toward the door, then stopped. You know what the ironic thing is? If you had just been proud of me for buying a house, if you had celebrated my success instead of trying to steal it, we'd still be a family. But you chose greed over love. You chose entitlement over relationships. You chose Victoria's delusions over reality. Dad was crying now too. "We know. We're so sorry. We know we can't undo what we did, but please, the time for apologies was before you sued me." I said now it's too late. I left them there in their shrinking house facing the consequences of their choices. Victoria got sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and 3 years probation. She'll also pay full restitution to everyone who donated to her fraudulent fundraisers. My parents lost their house and moved into a small apartment. Dad's health insurance covered most of his stress-induced heart attack, but not all. My aunt got fired from her job after her employer decided her online harassment campaign reflected poorly on the company. The extended family mostly sided with me once all facts came out. My grandmother said she was proud of me for standing up to bullies, even family ones. I'm still living in my house, the house I bought with my own money. I got engaged to Sarah, the woman I'd been dating, and we're planning our wedding for next spring. We're thinking about kids in a few years.